Chess isn't chess at all unless there are chess pieces. Today we'll be adding chess pieces and some basic movement to our chess program. Hello everyone, my name is Mike and you're watching Polymath Unlimited. In this series, we are programming a chess engine from scratch in C++. Last time, we learned how to get mouse and keyboard input in OpenGL applications, and we wrote code that allows the user to select squares on the board by clicking on them. In this episode, we will start writing the actual chess engine part of our program. We'll start this process by first defining how our engine will represent a game of chess internally. It should be fairly obvious that the program we are writing in this series will be quite a bit more complicated than the Sudoku program we wrote in the last series. In order to make our code easier to organize and maintain, we will start using object-oriented programming moving forward. Object-oriented programming is a programming paradigm where our code is organized into objects. These objects contain information called attributes and functions called methods, which allow our program to interact with the object's attributes. For example, in our chess program, we want to be able to represent a chess game as an object in our program. So we will want to make objects called chessboards, which have attributes like pieces, castling rights, en passant targets, etc., and methods which allow us to move pieces on the chessboard, check if a move is legal, get the best move from the current position, and so forth. Luckily, object-oriented programming is very easy in C++. Let's first add a new file to our Visual Studio project called chessboard.h. This file will contain all of the information that will define how our chessboard objects will be structured. Keeping this code in a separate file from our main file will make it easier to keep our code organized. We define an object structure using classes. Let's make a chessboard class in our new chessboard.h file. Inside our class, we'll put some access specifiers. Anything after the private specifier will only be accessible to other parts of the chessboard class, whereas anything after the public specifier will be accessible to any other part of our program. In order to represent a chessboard, we also have to be able to represent pieces on that board. So we'll use some preprocessor directives to define some constants for the chess pieces. Now for actually representing a chessboard, we have a few different options. A chessboard is simply an 8x8 grid of squares with pieces on it. So a very straightforward way to do this would be to just have an 8x8 array in our chessboard class to represent the board. This works fine, but it turns out there is a better, though less intuitive way. Since a chessboard is an 8x8 grid, that means that there are 64 squares on that grid. Conveniently, there are also 64 bits in a 64-bit unsigned integer. So what we will do is have 12 unsigned 64-bit integers in our chessboard class, one for each piece type. For each of these integers, a 1 in a certain bit will mean that a piece of that type is on the square corresponding to that bit. This approach is called bitboards, and it will unlock a whole bunch of optimizations later that simply wouldn't be possible if we just used an 8x8 array. Note that we need to include the C standard int header from the standard library in order to use 64-bit unsigned integers. We could simply use long ints instead, but using uint64t's from C standard int guarantees that our integers will always be exactly 64 bits long, no matter what system we are running on, whereas we don't necessarily have that guarantee with generic long ints. Now in the public section of our chessboard class, we'll need to define some methods. For now, we'll just have 3 methods: getPiece, setPiece, and chessboard. GetPiece and setPiece will allow us to see which pieces are on the chessboard and to place pieces onto the chessboard. The chessboard method is a bit of a special case. It's a very special type of method called a constructor. This method will get called anytime we declare a new chessboard object somewhere in our program, allowing us to define the default starting state of all chessboard objects. We can tell that it is a constructor because it has no return type, and its name is the same as the class name. In order to define the behavior of these functions, we could simply add the code for them here in the class definition. However, it's usually considered good practice to put the function code for class methods in a separate CPP file. Let's add another new file to our project called chessboard.cpp. We'll include our chessboard.h header file and start adding the code for all of the chessboard class's methods. We do this just like we would any other function. The only difference is that we need to specify that the function we are writing is a method of the chessboard class. For the getPiece function, we will first construct a bit mask of the given square by constructing 1 as an unsigned 64-bit integer, then left shifting it by the square index. This gives us a bitboard with 1 in the right spot to represent the square we want to get the piece from. Then we simply loop through all the bitboards and test them against the mask with bitwise AND. If any of the bitboards have a 1 in the right bit, then we will immediately return the corresponding piece. If no bitboards have a 1 on that square, then we will return empty. The setPiece function will be very similar. We construct a bit mask just like we did with getPiece, and then loop through all the bitboards. For the bitboard corresponding to the piece we are placing, we force a 1 into the bit corresponding with the square by ORing it with our bit mask. For all the other bitboards, we set the corresponding bit to 0 by ANDing it with the inverted mask. The constructor is very straightforward. We simply want to set each bitboard to the correct value to hold the information for a chess game's initial starting position. Here I've simply used 16-digit hexadecimal values to correspond with our 64-bit bitboards. If you're following along, you can pause the video here to copy these values down, or you can go to my GitHub to see the full code for this episode later. Now that we have a basic framework for our chessboard class, we can start using chessboard objects in our program. Note that our chessboard class isn't done yet. There's still a lot more to add here. We'll continue adding attributes and methods to our chessboard class as we need them later on in this series. For now, let's go back to our main.cpp file, include our chessboard.h header file, and add a global chessboard object called game to our program. We'll also add a new function called drawPiece, which will contain all the OpenGL code necessary to draw chess pieces in our window. This function is pretty long, but fairly straightforward, and simply contains OpenGL code in a big switch statement that draws our chess pieces as polygons. This code was mostly written by experimenting with different sets of vertices for each piece until I got something that looked convincing enough. It's pretty basic, but it works reasonably well, as we'll see in a moment. I won't go over exactly how I came up with each vertex specifically here, since that would take a while, but if you want the exact code for this function, you can find it on my GitHub as part of the code for today's episode. Now in our draw function, after we have drawn all the squares and highlighted the selected square, we will draw the chess pieces on the board. This is as simple as looping through all of the board squares, constructing the square in a format that our chess engine recognizes, and then drawing the piece on the square using our drawPiece function and our GameObject's getPiece method. If we run the program, we should see that our chessboard now has chess pieces on it. Let's make it so that the user can move these pieces around. This will require expanding our mouse function a bit. We'll first get the board coordinates of the click, then check to see if the square is selected and if the selected square is not empty. If so, we will also check to see if the click coordinates are on the board, then move the selected piece to the square we just clicked using our GameObject's getPiece and setPiece methods. Then, we'll deselect the square by setting selectx and selecty to -1. If we aren't moving a piece, then we'll select the square we clicked on just like we did before. If we run the program now, we should be able to move pieces around on our board by clicking on them. We'll add one more feature before we end today's video. Right now, the board always gets drawn from the white player's perspective. That might get a little annoying for the user if they want to play as black, though. Let's make it so that the user can flip the board and view the game from the other player's perspective. This is actually really easy to do. In our keyboard function, if the user pressed space, we'll simply add 8 times the square size to square x and square y. This will move our board corners to the opposite corners. Then we'll multiply square size by -1, which will mean that everything will get drawn in the opposite direction as before. If we run the program, we should see that pressing the spacebar does flip the board around as intended. The way we have our program structured, this also automatically handles flipping the selected square as well, which is a nice bonus. However, there's a slight bug we'll need to address. Notice what happens when we resize the window when viewing the board from Black's perspective. The board immediately reverts to White's perspective again. This is obviously not what we want. Luckily, this issue is pretty easy to resolve. We just need to check to see if we are viewing the board from Black's perspective in our resize function. We can do this with a Boolean variable, which is set to true if square size is less than 0. Then, after we have recalculated all the board drawing parameters, if the board was flipped before resizing, we simply flip it back again by calling our keydown function manually and passing the space character as its key argument. Now if we stretch the window while in Black's perspective, we should see that everything works perfectly. At this point, our program is starting to really look like a game of chess. There's still a long way to go before we're done, though. Next time we'll add some more functionality to our chessboard class to handle actual chess moves. This will let us efficiently handle things like castling, en passant captures, pawn promotions, and undoing moves. Until then, feel free to play around with this program and maybe put your own spin on it. Have any ideas for features you want to see me put in this chess engine? Let me know in the comments. Again, the full code from this video is available on my GitHub. The link to that is in the video description. Thank you for watching. Thanks to all my subscribers, and I will see you next time.